Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagine podcast. Y'all, I have another amazing guest for you this week. Her name is Tracee Loran. She's an author, she's a caregiver, and I am just really excited to have her come on board because her kind of crash course into caregiving was a sudden experience. And I think for those of you who are listening who maybe are in kind of the more beginner stage of your caregiving entrepreneurship journey, I just wanted to have Tracee come on and help share her story. And we're just going to talk about kind of the beginning stages of caregiving and just give you some tips to make the process easier because there is so much information that you have to absorb, so many new skills you have to do. And then there's that component of just stress, shock, and grief when you're just thrust into this kind of a role without any pre-warning. And it's also just scary, right? Just scary seeing someone that you love, be it a parent, grandparent, cousin, aunt, uncle, I don't care who, child. It can be just even stressful and traumatic seeing someone that you hold so dear just suddenly just decline so rapidly in health. And suddenly you're in that anxiety mode of like, what do I, are they going to be okay? So anyway, Tracee, thank you for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast this week.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Melissa, and just to speak about something that I think is really important. It can help a lot of people.
Absolutely. That's what I'm just passionate about. Every episode of this podcast, I really want it to be something that can just really encourage and inspire people who are in this, hard journey of caregiving. It can happen to anybody. Statistically, we will all eventually care for somebody, be it our spouse or partner, our aging parents or grandparents, and maybe even other, like another, last week I had someone on here who cared for other great aunts and uncles. And so, that generation. So, depending on your culture and your family, caregiving will happen to anybody. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you don't have a healthcare background, like I was fortunate to have. So, I want to help people who don't have that background have some just helpful tips, a little encouragement to make it a little bit easier. So, I'm so excited about you being on. So, a lot of people obviously may not know who Tracee Loran is. Loran is. So I'm sorry if I slaughtered your name. So, could you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of digress into how your caregiving journey started.
Sure, thank you. So I am Tracee Loran. I am a New York City-based writer and actress, and I've worked for ESPN. I've done a lot of things. I am most importantly a caregiver right now, but I have a digital series called Black History Baddies that I absolutely love. That's my passion project right now, and so that's running across social media and all over the internet. So encourage your listeners to check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, and don't worry, as always, on the blog on Tuesday when it comes out, and wherever you're watching this on Spotify, Apple, or my YouTube channel, look in the description box below for all the information to connect with the resources that we will talk about, and to connect obviously further with Tracee. So, okay, so we know a little bit about you and your spunky, amazing vibe, but let's talk a little bit about your caregiving journey. So, how did you get thrust into your caregiving role that you are in today?
So my grandmother is who I'm caring for at the moment, and she's 97 years old. When she hit 90, she fell. Before that, she was living by herself alone in Mississippi, I should say that. So I live in New York. My grandmother's in Mississippi, and she was living alone. And she was doing great. She's very independent and she's just vital and all those things. After she turned 90, like I want to say about 5 months after her 90th birthday, she had a big fall. And so she called me in the morning. And we always talk very early in the morning, but this morning she called me a little earlier. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so she's like, well, I fell. And I was like, okay. And so she was trying to lift her garbage out of her garbage can because she was still taking her own garbage down to the end of the road, as you have to do in the South. And so when she was pulling it out, she lost her balance and she fell back and she slammed against the hot water tank and she broke many of her ribs. And so she was just taken to the hospital. She was in the hospital for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And doctors were like, all right, it's time for her not to be living alone. So my mom went first just for like a couple of weeks because she was going to Hong Kong. And so she asked me to come. And I said, all right, fine. I went there and I would always spend like the last month of the year with her anyway. But this year I went a little early. It was in December that this happened. And so I ended up being there for 9 months to help her, get back to health and everything. And then my mom came and relieved me so I can come back to New York for a few months. And then we just started going back and forth. So now my mom is there for 6 months and I'm there for 6 months. So we switch on and off with the seasons. I get to have summers in New York, which,
Yeah.
which is what I begged for.
Right, right. Got to see the sun once in a while. That's why I love living about in the Pacific Northwest, at least in Idaho. We do actually get all four seasons. It doesn't rain here as much as it does like in Washington or Oregon. So it's nice. I like it. I have to see your girl has to see the sun. So but yeah, I love thank you for sharing that first of all. Because that is really sometimes how caregiving starts, guys. It's not necessarily a hospitalization. It's not necessarily a car accident or something like that, where something really extreme and traumatic happens that thrusts you into the aftermath of like, oh, okay, so now we have lifelong chronic respiratory problems or health problems or mobility problems. It can happen in the blink of an eye in a simple moment where you're just doing just basic in the healthcare industry we call it things like that, doing basic ADL care, activities of daily living. So something as simple as tying your shoes or stepping into the bathtub, or like Tracee explained, her grandmother just being responsible and taking her trash out to the end of the road. It can happen in the blink of an eye. And Tracee is so fortunate that she has a family member that could help. But some of you I know might have a situation of you have an unhealthy relationship with your family because of maybe abuse, neglect, or maybe some other situation. Or it might just be distance. Maybe even with the distance, the distance is a problem where whereas Tracee and her mother have figured out a system. Okay, I'll go for 6 months, and then I'll go for 6 months, and then we can have a break and go back to our lives in our respected homes in different states. But for some of you, traveling can add up, and that can be kind of easy, really difficult to coordinate too about the home life, especially if you're a situation like me where I have a husband, I have a small child that's in school, that's only in kindergarten. So there's those other components that can make it complicated. So I really want you guys to realize that when you're figuring out your plan, you need to figure out what works for you. And it's okay to if you kind of it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, guys, okay? When we start to try something new, be it in our businesses or in our self-care or especially with caregiving, the best way to start is just to start with something, start figuring it out, and then as you go, you can tweak. So if you find something doesn't work for you, whether it's maybe I mean, I'm sure if Tracee and her mom, when they started doing the 6 months off routine, if something didn't work, they would have power out and go, okay, this isn't working. What can we do? What are some other options to where we can still take care of Tracee's grandmother and honor her and her wishes to not be in a facility, but also make sure that we're not totally tapping ourselves out because we have other obligations to fulfill. So, Tracee, if someone's in that situation where maybe maybe it's not workable for them to do a on-off type situation with family or friends, what is another tip that you would give for a resource that people could tap into to help them?
Sure. Well, I do have to say that though my mother and I, we figured it out, it is important to point out that it's still a challenge. It's not a walk in the park. It's not the easiest thing when you're talking about uprooting your life for 6 months at a time. So you really don't get a chance to get in a rhythm. I have a career and my mother has a business in the Chicago area. So it's not easy, but we found a way to make it work because it is important, because it is my grandmother, her mother, and we love her and all that stuff. So you find a way to make that sacrifice. And I don't even call it a sacrifice because I think it's something for me that I should do, that I should be doing. And
Mhm.
when we're there, each of us for our 6 month tour of duty, we initially for the first 3 years didn't have any other help in the house. And so we do have family that live by and they're very great. And if we needed to go to the store or needed to do something, they would come and sit with grandma. But I'm talking about someone that's in the house for long stretches of time. So for the first 3 years, we didn't have that. finally, last year, we got a really great crew. And so now during the day, between 8:30 a.m. and 3:30 in the afternoon, when we're there, we do have help, so that at least we can get out and take care of our own things and just have some time to ourselves. Now, if you don't have that and you don't have anybody, there are agencies. It depends on what state you're in. Unfortunately, some states don't pay you to take care of a mother or a father or a grandmother. They don't pay for that. So that's a problem in this country. And that's a problem with a lot of states. In Mississippi, which is where my grandma is, they don't pay for close relatives to take care of them. So I don't get money and my mother doesn't get money at all either. So, but there are agencies that will help you to get someone else that's not a family member and that doesn't live in a house to assist you. And you might get a few hours, you may not get the full 8 or 7 or whatever hours it is. Your insurance could also provide some help. So there are different things that you can look into. But I would start with certain agencies, just look up elder care, agencies, how can I get some assistance? There's Catholic charities that do it. There's different agencies that may be paid by the government that'll do it as well. Again, it just depends on what state you're in. So you have to check that out. I would just start, like for me, I sent out a note to all of the churches in the community when I said, this is who this is. I knew a lot of people would know grandma because she is 97 and she's has a strong presence in the community. A lot of people know her. So when they saw her name, they're like, oh, yes, yes, we love her. So I would say you have to get creative. Really, really, really think beyond that box when you're trying to figure out how you can get the help that you need. There are also family members that you may be distant family members that could help you. I would say putting notices out on social media and just things like that to help spread the word, to say that you're looking for someone, to say exactly what you need. This is what I need. This is who it is. This is the care that's needed. So you kind of have to start there and you have to tell everybody you talk to. I don't care if you're meeting a stranger, you're just like, oh, do you know of any agencies that do this, and that? And you just never know what you're going to find out that way. A lot of times we're very hesitant to share our business like that or to think, oh, this person won't know anything. They won't be able to help me. You never know who can help you. So I would say, in addition to listening to podcasts like Melissa's, that, get in a group, talk to other caregivers. There are so many people out there that are caregiving. They're the only people who understand what you're going through. Your friends are great and everything, but if they're not caregiving, trust me, they do not understand. And I think there's a difference between being a caregiver of an elder or an adult that's homebound than it is being a parent to a child. Of course, that's a very important role and that has its own challenges. I'm never going to take that away. But it is a little different when you're dealing with someone who has lived life, who has their own experiences, their own ideology, all this stuff. And now you have to deal with them and take care of them. They feel like, oh, you're taking their independence away and all that. So you have to talk to people who understand exactly what you're going through. So I think for me, that's a really, really big tip. Find a person to vent.
Yes, absolutely. You touched on so much good stuff there. So definitely for sure. I did work as a CNA and home health agencies for a year and a half. Primarily, I worked in long-term care facilities because I worked with elderly and dementia patients. That was my passion. And also too, I like the home health, don't get me wrong, because I got to take care of family patients with their families in their homes. So they got to be in that environment. But the agency I worked for, there was no insurance and I
Mm.
didn't get mileage. So just for me to be able to live and pay my bills, it just didn't work for me. So I was better off being in the security of being able to get insurance through a long-term care facility and steady work hours. So that way I could pay my bills. But I still got to caregive, which I love. So I will say with home health, though, that's a good option because, again, check with your insurance. Again, it will vary from insurance plans, also what agencies are in your area for your state, your community, your city, but it can be a good option because, guys, honestly, there were several clients I had that I wasn't necessarily there to do help with ADL care in terms of helping them bathe, administer medication, do meal prep, or help them with toileting. Sometimes I was just strictly there. I remember one case I did have that I was there strictly just to be an adult on site for about 2 hours, 2 or 3 times a week, I think, if I remember right. And it was just to be there in case that person needed something until their family member got home, because there was just a little window between when they could be there and when they got home. And they just and she was elderly as well, and so it was just definitely out of concern for her safety. So look into that. So if you need someone just to sit with them and not necessarily do hands-on care, home health is a good option, but they're also good too if you do need that help with a break from the ADL care. If you have wound, because you get a whole when you join home health, you get a whole gamut of other resources. You get a social worker, you get a nurse, you get PT, OT, dietary, and speech, which is you wouldn't think it'd be a problem, but speech is also part of swallowing. So I remember with my dad, he towards the end he was definitely having some trouble with starting to swallow food. So I had a speech evaluation done for him, and sure enough, we realized, you know what, we need to start changing the texture of his food a little bit. He could still eat, for dignity, but we just had to be careful to make sure the texture was adjusted a little bit for safety. So it's a great resource. And also some have chaplains. So if you are, and my dad worked as a chaplain for over a decade with the agency, and the chaplains are trained to handle not just Christian-based faith, but other practices to help administer spiritual comfort when you're going through that. Also for hospice as well. So definitely look at that. Also look again, Tracee touched on churches. Check with churches. A lot of them will also have food banks and clothing banks, things like that that could be of help to you. Besides maybe just manpower of just, hey, can you sit maybe 2 hours a week in my home just in case? So someone is there if something really bad happens and we do need to have someone call 911 or something. Community centers, Facebook is also a good one for support. I've noticed a lot more specific Facebook groups pop up in light of the pandemic, because the sole focus for 2020 was the COVID-19 epidemic. So a lot of other health problems got pushed to the side, and so now people are feeling the brunt of that, where they got worse, or maybe they now, because of going through COVID, they have lingering chronic health issues, and now they've not been able to work, and now they are homebound and they are sick, and family are having to step up. So type in by your specific age demographic, whether it's elderly, dementia. You can type in the illness like muscular. I've seen stuff for muscular dystrophy, epilepsy. So look into that. There might, not that may not be the right fit for you. I haven't been able to find one that's really been a gel with me. I've found other elms outside of social media, and that's fine. But it might be a good option for you to have, like Tracee said, a place to vent. You need to have a place to vent and go like, oh, like, because no one will understand, like caregiver, like if I tell Tracee, like my husband, had a reaction today to his meds, and she'll get it. She'll understand the whole gamut of what that means of making more medical appointments, making more phone calls, having to update our medical logs again, and just being on heightened alert for any other trouble. So someone who's in your headspace will really go so far. And it's no different than entrepreneurship, guys. Same thing. Like, we need mentors and coaches, right? So in our squad, our badass squad too, for helping us navigate building our businesses. So there's the parallel too. Caregiving is the exact same thing. So Tracee, let's talk about, okay, so so we've gotten some ideas of how they can get going to find their person. But with that being said, in terms of doing a long caregiving journey, because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Caregiving is a marathon. It's not a journey. What are some tips that you would give for helping people manage and cope through that long-term marathon in a healthy way, especially if they're in a situation like you where you're really hands-on? I mean, like for me, it's 24/7 because I'm a primary caregiver for my husband and a stay-at-home mother. So it's all on the table 24/7. But especially for you, like people, but for people like you, where you're in a situation where you're having to uproot and just, be on hand, on alert 24/7, as all caregivers do. What are some tips that you have for helping people cope in a healthy way? Because bottling it up doesn't work either.
No. So I think it's really important, and I'm sure you would agree, you have to find time for yourself some kind of way. And you cannot be any good to anyone if you are not a whole person, if you are stressed out, if you are feeling overwhelmed or just feeling resentful, there are things that could come up inside of you and you don't want to feel that way because you're like, wait, this is grandma, this is my mom, or this is my dad, this is my child. And so you may feel resentful. And so you have to make sure that you take care of yourself so that you don't feel that way. And if that means, being able to dart out for an hour, if you have some help, right? Because this goes back to finding a way to get someone that can come in and help you out for an hour or two or three. Like you said, you were, Melissa, you were the bridge for 3 hours for someone. 3 hours is a good chunk of time. You can catch a movie in 3 hours. You can go out to lunch, or you can do whatever. Just read a book. You can do whatever you want to do in that time. But I think it's important to have some time to yourself, any kind of time to do whatever you want to do so that you can then prepare for the next part of the day when you have to be a caretaker. You're absolutely right. Caretaking doesn't come with a timeline. So, when you get pregnant, most pregnancies last 9 months, sometimes eight, if they're born early, seven, eight, whatever. But all right, in 8, 9 months, I'm going to be a parent. You can read all the books. You can try to prepare. You can go get the crib and all the baby clothes and all that stuff. Caregiving doesn't come with that kind of timeline. There's no, in 9 months, you're going to be a caregiver. It's boom, you're a caregiver. And then, yes, it's probably going to be long term, right? And so you just have to prepare yourself for that and figure out, what does my life look like? How can I rearrange things to fit this into my life? So for me and for my mom, we had to do that. For me, as a writer and as an actress who's based in New York, I had to figure out, how can I infuse or integrate my creative life into my caregiving life. And so that's actually how Black History Baddies was born, in Mississippi. So I get a chance to film my series and still be a caretaker. So I'm still feeding my creativity and not feeling like I'm missing out on that, while I'm also doing something that it's an honor for me to take care of my grandmother. So I am able to do both of those things. So you have to figure out, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're running a business, whatever you're doing, you got to figure out, how do I integrate this into my caregiving life? Do I find an intern? If you don't have the money to pay like a full assistant, there's just so many ways that we have to really think. We're entrepreneurs. We're already radical, to be honest with you, because most people just want to get up. And there's nothing wrong with that. They want to get up, they want to go, they want to punch a clock. They want to know that when they turn the lights out in their office, they're gone. Entrepreneurs are very radical. And so we're already think outside of the box people. So now if you become a caregiver, and you're still an entrepreneur, you still have to use that entrepreneurial mind to figure out how to make all of this now work. That's what I do. You got to catch your breath for a second. Once it happens to you, it's kind of, oof, all right, this is happening, right? So, but once you catch your breath, and you say, all right, I know how I can make this work. Take good notes, right? Keep your notebook or whatever, your digital notebook or your old fashioned notebook with you. You take great notes about your person with whom you're caring, for whom you're caring. You take good notes, and then you also have notes for yourself, and you have a good calendar. I think all of these things will help keep you organized in this new caregiver slash into your entrepreneurial life. It also, I found that the blessing in it has prepared me to help other people. So now when I have my friends or people in my circle who now become caregivers, I can give them advice. And I can give it because I've now lived this for now 7 years now almost, right? I can say, just the other day, I'm actually a health proxy for one of my friends, healthcare proxy, and she has cancer, and I had to go to the emergency room with her, and I had to be with her. I was prepared for that mentally because I'm already a caregiver. So there are so many blessings to it. It is challenging, but you find that it just makes you such a much even more rounded person. And you're like, wow, I've added another layer to who I am because of this caregiver role that I did not anticipate, but it's here. And now this is who I am, so much more stronger and able to really deal with unexpected challenges even more efficiently and just better handle them because I've been a caregiver for my grandmother and have had to be her healthcare proxy, had to be her advocate, all the different things that I've had to do for her, things that I never imagined that I would have to do, but I've had to do them. And so it's made me a better person. It sounds so cliche, but it has. It's just made me a better person, I
You
think.
know, and I think that's important to remember. Like, we will think about it as entrepreneurs. We set out to build our businesses because we are passionate about something. We have a unique experience that we've been through that we know other people are going to go through, and we want to help them through it. For me, it was the opposite. I was a caregiver before I was an entrepreneur, and so professionally, and also personally, caregiving for my grandmother, caregiving for my husband. And then also, and then afterwards, and then a couple years into my caregiving journey, then we added my dad in. So, lots of experiences. And, the thing that really drives me is like, I'm fortunate to have that experience in healthcare and also caregiving for all the multiple family members I have. But I know a lot of people don't have that skill set of like, how do you write practice notes? What questions do you ask? How do you organize all this information? Um, what does something even mean medically? The wording, the jargon, it's so overwhelming. It can be scary. And so just helping somebody through that can be so powerful. And same thing as a caregiver. The skills that you gain or the skills that you need to be a caregiver are very much the same. You have to manage your time. You have to practice self-care. You need to be creative in how to just make it work. So a lot of the skills that you use as an entrepreneur are the same skills that you're going to need as a caregiver. So it's not too foreign. It's just the difference is that and you're still emotionally involved. Like we're as a caregiver and business coach, I'm passionate about making sure my clientele get the help they need and they are successful in navigating scaling or building their businesses while at the same time being 100% present with their loved one. And, same thing. And then as a caregiver, same thing. You're passionate about helping your loved one live the best quality of life while also not sacrificing your well-being. That's what it comes down to. And, when you're taking out time for yourself, the best way I think you can do that is to lean into things that are outside of those two roles. Whether it's like reading a book or getting out of the house and going for a walk or even doing another passion that you have. So for me, I'm a knitter. I've been an avid knitter since I was a little girl, since I was 10. And so knitting has been knitting baby blankets for people, for friends and family who are expecting, or scarves or things like that. I love doing that stuff. And it's creative. I'm doing something to, again, it's a service where I'm doing something to help someone, but it's something different. It's creative. It's not part of the business. It's not part of my caregiving journey. It's an outlet to be creative. So find ways to do that. And maybe it's not necessarily a craft or hobby, but maybe it's making sure you have that, like Tracee said, find your person. And if it's like what I did with home health, where it is just for 2 or 3 hours, maybe it doesn't need to be every day, but maybe once a week. So you can go out and participate in a Bible study at your church, or you can volunteer at an organization that you're passionate about that maybe you did before you became a caregiver. Or maybe it's something else, or maybe you're taking an art class because you've been wanting to dabble in painting, but you've never done it. Do it. Taking time to nurture your mind, your body, and your soul. Yes, I want you to, thinking with my healthcare brain, I want to make sure you guys are getting enough sleep, enough nutrition, enough hydration, movement. So physically, you can cope with being a caregiver, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I want you to be able to cope. And part of your mental and emotional and spiritual coping ability is having an outlet to have some fun and also having an outlet to express the hard stuff, be it with your leader of faith or your pastor, or maybe a mentor or coach, or maybe even it is a counselor. Because think about it, counselors and therapists, I know it's scary and cliche, but seriously, counselors and therapists are trained to handle with trauma. And they have a lot more access to other things that you might need. Maybe is medication, a light dose of medication, the right fit for everybody? No, but they do also have other techniques and ideas and referrals to maybe other people that could help you find a regime that works for you and managing your stress and anxiety. Because I know personally for me, I've struggled with stress and anxiety ever since I was a kid. And there was a time in my early 20s where I did need some heavy counseling and some light medication. Obviously, now there's other things I do to manage it, but but at the same time, I know that if I get into a really bad spot, I can go back and see my therapist. And and it's a safe place for me to vent and to problem solve and figure out how to deal with whatever the sensory overload that I might be feeling at the time. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. I want you to figure out, guys, what works for you and take the tips and modify it that in a way that works for you. Remember, there's so much information. I mean, there's lots of other gurus out there more than just Tracee and myself. So take what we're telling you, tweak it, modify it to work for your business and your season of life as a caregiver, and then just run with it. And don't feel shame. It's not going to be perfect the first time you start.
For the
Tweak,
second or third
tweak.
time.
Yeah, for the second or third time, or maybe the fifth or the 10th time. It's okay. There's no shame in it. Okay. I can tell you for sure, as 4 years as an entrepreneur, I have flopped. I have made mistakes, and I will still make mistakes because I'm still growing and learning. Same thing as a caregiver. Yes, I have 15 years professional professional career under my belt, but y'all, it's different when you're caring for someone that is your family member. And also too, just it's different with each situation because you're dealing with different health issues. My dad and my husband and my grandmother, all three of them had different health issues. And I had various different medications and regimes and treatments I had to keep track of. It was a whole different can of worms with each situation. So just breathe, just start creating a system for building your support network, like Tracee was talking about, and having people there to help you, whether it's home health, hospice, church, community center people, friends, family, anybody, and then also be creative in having creative outlet to release and process what you're going through because bottling it up is never a good idea because trauma, stress, and grief are going to come any way, shape, and form. And also just maybe acknowledge that. That's something to think about too. Just acknowledge it that, you know, it is a sacrifice. I mean, like Trace said, it's not a sacrifice because she loves her grandmother and she'll do what she does. I love my husband. I will do what I have to do. That's why I'm here helping y'all and doing a different career than so I can be home full time with my family. But even so, there is that season, that moment of when you leave one identity and you're shifting into another. And that's hard. And there's no way and you don't have to sugarcoat it, okay? It's okay to feel we're born with emotions. So you're going to feel angry, you're going to feel sad, you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to feel scared, you're going to feel, ticked off that this had to happen to you and your family. But it's not your fault, it's not your loved one's fault. And I just want you to know that there's people here to help you. Hence why I have Tracee on here, hence why I'm here. There's people that want to help you. Okay, so Tracee, as we wind down our conversation, I want you to share one more tip with people that we've covered getting a person, making sure we have time for self-care. What is one strong tip you want to leave with our listeners to help them in their caregiving journey?
I would say it sounds crazy, but have as much fun as you can with it. If you are taking care of an elder, for example, like me, taking care of my grandmother, I make sure I record her as much as possible. I take many pictures as much as possible because you want to have these memories. This is a good time. It's a blessing to be able to take care of someone. It is challenging, especially if you're dealing with, like Melissa said, there's all kinds of ailments. You can be dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's. You can be dealing with someone that's not mobile, all kinds of things, but there's still a person there. So record them. Get, if, as much as you can, if you can, get little stories here and there. However you can document this journey for yourself, however you can, whether you're going to pull out a journal, you can do a digital journal. Like I said, you can record your person. You just want to remember this because I do think it's a special time. No one can take that away. The fact that you poured this love and this energy into this person at this time of their lives when they really needed you is really special. And I hope you see yourself as special for that reason, that you were able to just pour into them and to love on them at a time when they're very vulnerable and afraid. And so imagine that you're there to make life as easy as possible for them. So I would say document, document, and also reward yourself and know that you are doing the very, very best that you can possibly do on any given day. And as Melissa said earlier, you will make mistakes because we all do, we're human, but you learn from those mistakes. Always reevaluate your processes. That's what we do. And say, all right, this isn't working anymore. We're going to have to switch this. We did it like this last year or last week or yesterday. Today, I think we need to do it like this. It's okay to figure out that something is no longer working or that your person has changed a little bit and no longer wants to do that way. So I would say be flexible. That's my next last tip. I would say be very, very flexible in your caregiving to know that things could change. You cannot be so rigid thinking,
Yeah.
oh, we've done it and done it. No,
Yeah, no,
that's
no, especially with chronic illness. As kind of someone who cares for epilepsy, I guarantee you, it has been every seizure I have ever logged has been different. There's been similarities, and every medicine he's been on, I think he's been over on like 7 or 8 now, and oh my gosh, everyone has been different. There's been similarities, but again, everything's different, and that and everyone's different with that illness. Because I guarantee you, like, if I had 50 people in this room with epilepsy, I guarantee you every single one would be on a different titration of meds. They would have different triggers and they would have different time frames of like how long it takes them to recover from every seizure episode. So so when you're absorbing information, also look through the lens. That's why writing down your progress notes or documenting your medical history document is so important. Every little thing, because it gives information. Everyone's different. So look through the lens. Remember to look through the lens of like, okay, standard medical, the FDA has said that there's these common side effects, in the trial, this is what the most common thing we saw. Your loved one might have something totally different. And so it's good for you to write that down and update your team so they know it and they can document because other people higher up do look at this stuff to get information about how things are progressing. And also to just think about how treatments can impact other things. Because obviously with like my grandmother and my father, they had multiple diagnoses. And so it was definitely this really tricky thing, especially for my dad towards the end, because he had like three things going on. And talking with his medical team was just really hilarious because like we'd want to address one tip of the iceberg, but then they're like, well, if we do this, we're going to shift this too much. And I don't think it's a good idea. And they'd be like, we concur, but then something else would happen here. It's like, okay, team, what do we do? Because it was just really tough because if sometimes trying to address one thing means we're going to make one thing worse, and if we address that thing, that's going to make another thing worse. It's like trying to find the happy balance sometimes is not achievable. It's just this delicate kind of status quo, and you have to learn what that is for your loved one. And so that's why writing down everything so you can remember it to recall when you're talking to your medical teams is important. And also, again, like Tracee said, just just be flexible. I guarantee you the way things are now in this month, in this year, in October 2024 is right now what it's going to be, but October 2025, I guarantee you will be totally different. It'll be so different. It might be better, it might be worse. We just don't know. There's no, little crystal ball that we can look into to predict this. Because again, there's no timeline with caregiving. It can go months, it can go years. I know with my dad when he passed, we thought he had 6 months at least. He died within a week. So it can be very fast. So I want you to just be prepared and also open and aware that there's no timetable. Things can happen, can change on a dime. And so taking the time in the beginning, or even now if you've been seasoned for a while, but you still have been dragging your feet on some of the stuff on creating a medical history record for your loved one, getting in the habit of documenting memories, taking time for yourself, mind, body, soul, and also just building a support network. So when the rubber meets the road, you have people that you can call when you're in trouble. Okay. And when things kind of get sticky for you. So anyways, Tracee, this has been so helpful. I know this is going to help so many people. And if people have questions about your amazing work and they want to connect more with you, where can we find more Tracee Loran?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. You can find me on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok at Tracee Loran. That's my handle everywhere. That's Tracee Lauren, Loran, or my website at traceeloran.com, where you can see all of the Black History Baddie seasons. There are 4 seasons of those, or if you just want to drop by and ask me a question, you can do that, and I'll be very happy to hear from you.
Yeah. So if people do have a question, is it best that they just go straight to your website and like send you an email or something?
Yes, you can reach me through my website, email. Yep,
Okay.
sure.
All right. Well, I will have all that information linked for y'all below again on my YouTube channel, the blog, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're watching this. And definitely tag Tracee on social media if you guys have further questions or reach out to her an email. She would love to connect with you. And guys, as we close out another episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagine podcast, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for listening. And just remember that you are not alone. Okay. You are not alone. You do not have to go through this alone. And if you're feeling stuck on how to create a medical history document, I have a free PDF checklist for how to create a go bag for being prepared for caregiving on the go, as well as I'm offering my $97 blueprint response 911 calls, where I will actually walk through and help create a medical history document for you. So information for that will be below. And as always, take care, and I will see you in another episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Imagine podcast. Take care, everybody.
Bye.